Hello, it's Mel from Movement and Youth Fitness Coaching. Today, I'm going to bring to you two vegetarian, well not vegetarian, there's some chicken stock in which you can substitute, dips. It's the festive season and we all like to indulge. We go to different events and there's nibblies. Well, dips have got some of the most high kilojoule intake components to them when you buy them off the shelf. But when you make them, they can be highly nutritious and low kilojoule. So I'm giving you two recipes today. We're doing a carrot dip and a Mexican bean dip. Both of the recipes can be found on my website on the blog. So go to myfitnesscoaching.com.au. Follow the links from the YouTube if you like. And don't forget, if you do enjoy these recipes, hit subscribe and like. I hope you enjoy them. They're very tasty. I'm going to show you some crackers, healthy crackers to serve with it as well, that are low kilojoule and have nutritional components to them, not just empty kilojoules. So we're going to start with the carrot dip. I've got about a tablespoon of olive oil in the bottom of my pot. I'm going to put some diced onion into that oil. And I've got caraway seeds, really tasty, bit of a licoricey component, just to add a bit of interest to the carrot and lift it up. So it's not going to overpower it, it's just going to lift it up like salt and pepper, so to speak. So that goes in with the onion. That's about a teaspoon. All the measurements are on the recipe, so just download the recipe blog. I'm now going to put that on a medium heat so it can sweat off. So sweating off is cooking it till it's translucent, not caramelizing or adding any color. All right, while that's going, come on over. I'm going to show you a thing about veggies. They come in their own packaging, their skin. Amazing thing. Now, most vegetables with skin, everyone, first thing they do is go to peel it. When the skin has some of the highest nutritional value in the whole vegetable. So I always leave the skin on all my vegetables, even pumpkin, really nutritional. So what we're going to do is give it a good wash. So I have a dish brush, basic brush for washing dishes. I keep it separate for washing my veggies. So that way I can make sure I remove all the dirt. And it's just a matter of giving it a good scrub, like so, and you won't even know the skin's in there. Sometimes with carrot, when you are cooking it for a dish that you're leaving it in pieces, well, the skin, you can see it. But when it's anything that I'm grating or pureeing, you wouldn't know if the skin was on it or not. So I always leave the skin on. So I give that a good scrub, just like so. Now, with your supermarket dips, the things you're looking at, so if you do have to buy it in a hurry, you're looking at fat content. All right, so even the celery, right down at the base there where it sits in the dirt. You're looking at fat content with dips, as well as all the additives and preservatives, and that's why it's really important. Dips are so easy to make. You'll see this today. You don't need a lot of preparation, depending on the dip. Really easy. So come on over to the chopping board. Watch how easy this is. You don't have to be great at cutting up. We just take those ends off, and depending how fast you want it to cook, depends on how small you cut it. So the bigger you leave it, the longer it's going to take to cook. But you can see I'm not doing any sort of fancy cut, so you don't have to be great with your knife. But do take off that end. Won't kill you, but it just might give you a tummy ache if you eat too much of it. Anyone that has horses will know what I'm talking about. Horses aren't allowed to eat that bit because it affects their digestion. It is the rutan. It just has some harsh components in it that don't totally agree with our belly. So that's going to just get chopped up roughly. And once my onions have finished sweating off, I add that into the pot. Now, if you want this to be completely vegetarian, you just add water to the pot. But I've got some leftover stock from something else I cooked through the week. So I'm adding the rest of my chicken stock, which is in a packet because we all get time poor. And it does just give it a bit of extra flavour. So if you know you don't have vegetarians, add chicken stock. But if you've got vegetarians, be kind to them. Use water so they can eat the dip too. Why should they miss out? All right, same with the celery. We just cut it rough. Doesn't have to be fancy, but so it purees without being stringy, do cut it smaller, but it doesn't have to be any specific fancy sort of exact cut, just small, so when we puree it, the strings don't get caught up in the blender and burn our motor out. All right, that's the preparation, waiting for the onions to sweat off. I'm going to have a look and see how they're going. So the whole idea, as they sweat off, the caraway seed flavour will come out and start to become aromatic. So they're quite close. So while that's finishing off, I'm going to talk to you about the Mexican bean dip. And I'm going to show you a little preparation I've got. So as I said in the last recipe, I don't like using tins just because of the preservatives. You miss out on heaps of goodness, but if you're time poor, do it. So these are bologna beans. You can use kidney beans. You can use whatever bean you like in your Mexican bean dip, even black beans. Amazing flavour through black beans. So I've been soaking those for 24 hours. Now what I'll do shortly is they're going to go in the pot. I'll rinse them under the tap to freshen them up, and then they'll go in the pot to boil off. They take about 50 minutes. So this is probably the longest part of both dip recipes, cooking off the beans. So we'll set that to the side. Come on over and have a look in my onion pot. So that's your onions sweated off, just like that. The caraway seeds have become aromatic, and we're going to pop all of those things into the pot, and then we're going to add the stock, and we put the lid on and let it simmer until those carrots are breaking apart. So when we puree it, it's really smooth and creamy texture. Turn the heat up so it comes to the boil quickly. Now with the liquid component, it's really important because it stays in the liquid for the pureeing. So I'm going to add a fraction more water, and then you'll see how much I've added. So it's just below the carrot line. If you have a look there, some of the carrot's still sitting above, and that's why you put the lid on to cook, because as you're cooking, every 10 minutes, give it a stir to rotate everything around so it all begins to cook. Why you don't want to put too much water is because as the carrot and celery cooks, they all give off liquid and they'll add to that liquid, and you don't want to have to make your dip too runny. You want it to sit on the cracker nicely so it doesn't drop on people's clothes. That's the aim of the consistency we're looking for. So I'm going to leave that now, and like I said, I'll stir it every 10 minutes. It's probably going to take 20-30 minutes for the carrot to cook, because we want it really soft. Meanwhile, I'll start getting things ready for that bean dip and getting the beans on. All right, so the carrots are cooked. Come on in and have a look at this. You can see the liquid's a little bit reduced. It's sort of almost thickened a bit, but when we puree it all, it'll thicken even more. And that's why you be careful with how much liquid you put in. So lots of flavors cooked into the liquid, lots of nutrients, and that's why we want to try and use as much of the liquid as we can, but we will still add it slowly so it's not too thin. So what we're going to do is we tip it into this bowl to let it cool. Never put hot things straight off the stove into your blender jugs, even if the machine says it's okay to, because it's just best to preserve that plastic and look after it. So have a look at how soft it is, so you've got a gauge at home to know what you're looking for. See how the fork, I'm barely pressing, and it just pushes into that carrot. All right, so that's what you're looking for, the fork to just push in. So I'm going to leave it there to cool, probably for about half an hour I want that to cool for before I even think about putting it into my blender jug. Right now, I'm just going to give the saucepan a rinse, and we're going to get the bean dip going, the Mexican bean dip. Make sure it's dry because I'm going to add oil, and if there's any water in the pot, the oil is going to spit. So we're going to add a bit of oil. So once again, about a tablespoon. I've got my chopped garlic going into the oil. So once again, the Mexican bean dip is with the carrot bean dip, the carrot dip. All on the website, myfitnesscoaching.com.au. In the blog section under recipes. That was all the spices that I put in, which are all listed in the blog. So you don't have to worry about measurements and what the spices are. So I'm going to turn that on a low heat because the idea is the garlic is sweated off along with those spices, and we get them aromatic. So that means when we go over the pot, we can smell the flavors of the spices are starting to come out. The garlic sweated off to take that raw heat and strong flavor out of it. It becomes just a smooth, sweet, lovely flavor. We let that sit there to sweat off. In the meantime, while that's sweating off, we wash the beans. So these are my bologna beans I told you about. And as I said earlier, if you really want to, you're time poor, get your canned beans. But for best nutrition, you can't go past dried beans and value. This started out at 1.5 cups. Once soaked, look how they swell up. It's almost doubled. So I'm just going to let them sit there until my herbs and garlic are aromatic and sweat it off. And then the beans will go in the pot. So my carrots are cool enough now that I'm going to blend them. I'm using a slotted spoon in order to leave some of that liquid behind. Because what I want to do is, like I said, make sure that dip is a nice consistency, that it doesn't slop off the cracker or make the cracker soggy. So what we'll do is we'll add the liquid once we've blended it to get the consistency right. I also added some cracked pepper, but no salt, because like I said, the chicken stock I used was fairly salty. So that will be enough to do the trick with all the other spices and herbs we have. So I'll just set that to the side. We're going to blend this and have a look at it. Cloth. Always leave a little opening so the steam and the pressure can escape when you blend. And pulse. And then turn it on. Alright, come on over and have a look inside here. Let's have a look at that consistency. So that's actually about where we want it. So all I'm going to do is maybe add a fraction more, just a fraction more, blend it a little bit more, and then we'll get it into the presentation bowl. So I'm just going to add a little bit more of that. Pulse it first. All right, come and have a look at that consistency and the amazing colour. That's the other beauty of leaving the carrot skin on. You get twice as much colour and nutritional value. So the skin really helps to make it vibrant. So we'll have a little taste test before I put it in the bowl. You've always got to check the flavour. And sweet. That's the other thing you'll notice the difference. If you did a side-by-side tasting, you'd notice how much sweeter carrot is when you leave the skin on. Oops, I forgot one step. Naughty me. My bad. I've got freshly chopped dill. Now what we're going to do with that is fold it through, and that's why I forgot it. Really important, don't chuck it in the blender. It just bruises it, the flavour doesn't come out, it makes it a little bit bitter when it gets bruised. I've hand chopped it with a sharp knife. If your knife is blunt, you'll bruise it, and it makes it bitter. So, hand chopped, sharp knife, nice and fine, sprinkle it in, and fold through. Just roughly, so you can see that vibrant green. And that's the other thing you won't get if you blend it. If you get the sprigs of dill and chuck them straight into the blender with the pureeing, you will not get that vibrant colour that you get when you fold it through. Now there's no dairy in here. It's got chicken stock, so it's not really vegetarian, but if you use water, it's dairy-free, vegetarian, everyone can eat it, everyone's happy. All right, just get that chopped dill through so it's not sitting all in one chunk. Try to mound it up to help with the presentation. And little sprigs on the top. And that's your carrot dip. All right, so in here, I've added the beans and I've continued to sweat it off a bit, making sure the beans were all nicely coated in those aromatic spices and garlic. And what I'm going to do now, I've turned the heat up to high. I've got 500 mils or 2 cups of cold water. And I'm going to add another 500. So a total of 1 litre of water from the beginning. Now when that comes to the boil, I'm going to turn it down so it just simmers. So what that does is it's deglazing the pot right now, so all those lovely caramelized, well not caramelized, the lovely flavours that have clung to the pot walls are going to come off and enter into that water, and that's where the flavour comes from. So this Mexican bean dip is completely vegetarian. Once again though, if you want to add chicken stock, go ahead, but you really don't need to. And another thing, if you are using chicken stock, Remember, don't add salt to the recipe, because even if you buy the low salt chicken stocks, they're still loaded with salt. You really don't need to add more. Let your tongue taste the flavors of the different spices and vegetables. Don't always make your tongue look for that salt. And that's a tip for getting yourself unhooked off of salt. We tell ourselves we need it, but if you let yourself get used to not eating salt, all of a sudden you discover whole new flavor profiles in your food, and you actually start to taste the different vegetables for what they are, and your tongue appreciates it. So give it a go, trying to cut down the salt in your diet. So I'm just going to let that come to the boil, and when it does, I'll turn it down to a simmer. These do take a long time to cook, so you're looking anywhere from 60 to maybe 90 minutes in between that area, just so you can allow yourself time at home to get them cooked. But it's worth it. So if you plan your time, we're all spending at least 90 minutes at home. You could cook it from scratch at least every now and again. So the beans have been cooked and cooling now, so there's no steam whatsoever. And that's it. That's exactly what's in the recipe. I didn't add water, the exact amount that's in the recipe, and it just cooks down to that beautiful, thick, stodgy consistency you can see. When it starts to thicken like that, that's when you need to start turning the heat down slowly. So it still simmers softly, and stir, scraping the bottom to get all of that beautiful, thick stodginess from sticking to the pot. So we're going to pop that into the blender. But guess what you could do if you wanted to make it a bit more traditional? You could leave it exactly like that and make it a chunky bean dip. So you could do it either way. So if you don't have a blender, don't run out and buy one. Serve it chunky and call it chunky bean salsa or whatever you'd like to call it. But it's Mexican bean dip. It's got all the spices in there. And I'm making sure I scrape all of the thick stodginess out, because that's important to keeping the dip staying thick. So scraping it off the spoon. It's also where a lot of the flavours now stored. So as that stodginess thickens, and basically it's the carbohydrates and the proteins from the bean causing it to thicken, and that's why you don't want to chuck out those waters from the beans, because a lot of the nutritional value is in it. So that's what we get out of legumes, some beautiful high quality kilojoule intake of carbohydrates and protein. Excellent food group. Should be in your diet every day, legumes. Give them a go. It's just the cooking time that puts most people off, but here's a tip as well. I'll cook up a big pot full and I'll put it into little containers, meal sizes, and just freeze them, so I can just pull them out of the freezer and I don't have to buy the tin stuff. So that's one way you can do it. Right, I'm going to pulse this and assess if I need to add some water to thin it down so it's that nice consistency that doesn't break the cracker, because you can have dip too thick when you put your cracker in, it just snaps it. So make sure you scrape the sides of your blender down and then put it back on to remix before you add more water. Now I can tell by looking at that, because once again, this is going to set more as it gets cold, because those proteins and carbohydrates in it, as they refrigerate, they set more. So I'm going to add a bit more. I'll put the water quantity in the recipe, but remember, it's only a guide. Add the quantity of water slowly, assessing it every time. Now that is beautiful and fluffy, but still holding a nice shape. So we're going to hold that there. That's perfect amount of water in there. So make sure you do serve it cold. You could serve it warm if you wanted to, but just depends what sort of a hurry you're in. It can be served warm or cold, this particular dip. You want to mound it up nicely for presentation. And taste test time. Delicious. Just soft flavours that harmonise and basically appeal to everyone's taste. So the spices in that recipe are by no means too strong. You could increase them if you want, but if you want a dip that everyone wants to eat and enjoy, don't increase the spices, just leave it and let the flavour of the beans be the hero of your dip. So next up, I'm going to show you how to prepare the crackers to go with both these dips. All right, let's do the crackers. So now we're going to finish off with the crackers for the dip. So what I got is wholemeal Lebanese bread, wholemeal. So just like that tahini we talked about in a previous recipe, wholemeal flour, less processed. So there's more of the outer skins on the wheat grain, which gives us more nutrition than just the basic white. That's why we want to eat as much wholemeal products as we can. So for the cracker, we just simply cut. Now you can cut any shape you want. If you want to cut it like a corn chip with corners, by all means, but why I cut these nifty little rectangles is because they don't stick in your mouth when you bite down on them. So like a corn chip with all those corners, as they get hard and you bite down, sometimes it sticks in the roof of your mouth and cuts it. Nice little square, you bite down, the sharp edges are minimal and it fits in your mouth better. The other reason is when people dip those skinnier parts in their dip, sometimes it breaks off, leaves the cracker behind, and you catch them with their finger in the bowl trying to scoop their bit of cracker out. With a nice straight edge, the cracker's sturdier to dip and stay together. So hence why we cut these nice little rectangle shapes. I don't waste the corners, they still go into my mix, but I try to keep the rest of it in rectangles. So then what I'm going to do is, once they're all spread out on the tray, I'm going to put it into a preheated 130-degree oven. If you do a high temperature, they are going to colour and toast. What I'm doing on 130 degrees is a simple matter of drying them out, no colour. And that's how they stay as a cracker. So I have pre-done these, so we're all ready to go. Nice little presentation here with your dips and your cracker. All that's left to do now is to make sure the dip tastes amazing with the cracker. Can't beat it, tastes great. Give the recipes a go with your next little festive season celebrations. Have a happy new year and see you next time on Junk Food Friday with Movement and You Fitness Coaching.